one more grouping. So here we go. Group 2 has a 3y in common, leaves me with y minus 3 going to 9 3 times. There's a plus in front of that third term and 2 in common. And when I factor out the 2, that gives me y, and then minus 3. Always kind of double check and make sure your signs and everything multiplies out, okay? So the group that is in common is the y minus 3, and that leaves me with 3y plus 2. Now, our next three problems are going to be, I just had some twist in them, so let's just see what happens. So D, again, I'm going to group 2, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. I'll take out a B, and that leaves me with A minus 2, and there's a minus sign. So then, let's see, they have a C in common, and that's going to leave me with 2, and because I took out a minus, it's going to change that plus into a minus. Took out the C, that leaves me with an A. Now, when I compare my two parentheses, I see I have A minus 2 and 2 minus A, and we learned in the last video that these are not exactly the same, they're opposites. So what negative 2 minus A would be equal to would be like a negative 1, and then flip this around to A minus 2. So my negative here and my negative here would make a positive C, and then A minus 2. So I'm going to have B times A minus 2 plus C times A minus 2. I'm going to factor out my A minus 2, and that will leave me with B plus C. Now, in all honesty, once you did that, if you came up with something like that, you could kind of get around it by just switching these two terms in their order and just put the AC minus 2C and group it that way. So if you happen to notice that. But this minus and this minus made us have a plus. All right, E, when I go to do E, what's going to happen is when I group these first two, notice that there's nothing in common. So I could take out a 1, but that's not going to match with this over here. So I may observe from the very beginning that factoring out's not going to work. So one thing you can do just to see if you can come up with something different is, again, to interchange terms. So on this one, I might do this. I'm just going to interchange these two middle terms, and I'm going to get minus mn plus 4n minus 4m. I could have done the same thing up here. I could have interchanged these two terms and probably gotten it to, no, it wouldn't have worked out at all. So no, don't do that. Don't interchange those two middles up there. All right, so once I did that, then I could group the first two, group the last two, and when I get my common factor of m here, so I have an m, that leaves me with m minus n. There's a plus there in that third spot, and these both have 4s, and then I have n minus n. Again, I notice that they're opposites, so I'm going to take a negative out, and I'm going to switch this order and make this be m minus n. So now I have this, and my m minus n's now are alike. I'm going to factor them out, m minus n times m minus 4, and this is factored. Let me point out, remind you that when something's factored, there are no pluses in between here. It's always a parentheses touching another parentheses. All right, and then the third, example 3, we'll take a look at this. Again, you're in the groove, and you may not think about it. If you might observe to begin with that they all have a factor of 2 in it. You could factor the 2 out to begin with, but let's say that you didn't notice that, and you came along and proceeded. So I group 2, and they have a 4 in common. They both have an A in common, and that leaves me with x minus b. Third sign is a minus. I'm going to factor that out. Then I have a 2 and a b, and that's going to leave me with x. And because I took the minus out, that's going to change this to a minus, and then b. All right, so then I'm going to factor out my x minus b, and I'm left with 4a minus 2b. But once we get going, you're going to find that we always need to look at our parentheses. And so on this one here, you see that they still have a GCF of 2 in there. So I'm going to take a 2 way. I'm going to put it out to the front. I've got x minus b. And when I factor the 2 out, that gives me 2a minus b. And so my fully factored expression is going to be 2x minus b and 2a minus b. And again, if you had noticed that from the very beginning, you could have taken that 2 out to begin with, and then taken the remainder, those 4 terms, and then factored by group 2, group 2. We'll put this last one, example 4, off until we meet again. So I'll see you next class, and we will do that problem. So work on those video checks.